Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do our exercise 6.1 where we're going to use the background bitmap trace. Now I've already opened up Rhino, I'm in inches, small objects, and I've maximized the top view. You're going to need to go to Google Image Search and search for your favorite vehicle. In my case, 67 Fastback Mustang is my favorite car of all time. Now let's talk a little bit about images that are going to work. We want to find one where we have some good contrast so that we can actually see the image that we want to trace and see how it's different from the background. In this case, we have a white, we have a tan background, we can see the edges of the car. This would be one that would be fairly easy. This would be one that might be a little bit more of a challenge. When we put it into background bitmap, it's going to turn it into grayscale. So this ground here might end up being a little bit dark. Scroll down here a little more. This is one where this bottom part would be really challenging. It's already difficult to see where the lines of the car and the tire differentiate from the ground here. So we want to make sure that we pick one where we have good contrast. This one we might do okay on the top. Bottom's going to be a little challenging. I'm going to go ahead and use this one here. I like the way this one looks. If I right click on it, go to save image as, we want to make sure that we can save it as a JPEG. JPEGs tend to work the best. Sometimes PNG files work, sometimes they don't. It's kind of hit or miss. So if you can find one you can save as a JPEG, it'll be easier. I'm going to go ahead and save this somewhere where it's easy to find. And I can minimize this, go back into Rhino. Now I'm going to type background bitmap. Mine auto-populates because I've used it recently. Hit enter. And here's a picture of the car that I did. I'm going to go ahead and start here at 0, 0 and go out until it's about 6, 8 inches long. Click, and there's my box. You can see it turns it to grayscale, but with the picture that I chose, we can still pretty easily distinguish between the car and what's in the background. Now here's where we're going to start using, we're going to have to hit enter to exit out of that. Here's where we're going to start using some of the lines, polylines, curves, etc. that we recently learned about in our lesson. So we have lines, polylines, we have our curves. For the most part, I prefer to use interpolate points. What that will do is draw a line that goes through the points and then it adjusts the curves a little bit. You may find that you like the control point curve better, and there may be cases or situations where you want to use just a regular polyline. I'm going to start with the interpolate points. Pick a place to start. Does not really matter, but I'm going to go ahead and start right here in the windshield. We can zoom in, we can zoom out, we can pan, all that to be able to see what we need to see. So I'm going to start right here, pick a place to start, and just kind of follow along. The sharper a curve is, the more we want to click. Each time we click, it adds a point, and that controls the line. If it's a long arc, we may not need to click in quite as many places, but we're just going to follow that along. If we have trouble seeing, we can zoom in, we can zoom out if we want to see big picture. But I'm going to keep going right here. There I have a tighter curve, so I'm going to use more points to go along. Here we have one that's a little bit longer. And at this point, if something's not quite perfect, that's okay, because we still have the option to adjust it later. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag that over the tire. I'm going to hit enter to stop. What that does is that stops my line. We can start a new one. Now it's kind of hard to see what we've drawn here. So what we can do is type background bitmap again. And up here at the top, this last option says visible. If we click on that, that hides the picture momentarily. So when we look at that, we can see I got a little bump here, I have a little dip here, some things I'll need to fix. But all in all, that doesn't look too bad. To bring it up again, just hit visible again, and we can start. Now I do like to have O snap on so that I can stop lines and restart them. Make sure that you have end selected. And here I'm going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to start tracing the tire. There's a couple places here where it's a little tough to see, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit enter to stop that. Again, if I want to see how I did, type background bitmap, click on visible. Okay, so we're doing okay. It's starting to look the way we want. Bring that up again. Now, here's an area. If we just want to go right along here, we can pretty easily use just a polyline. Drag that right out here all the way. Hit enter. There's my line. At this point, I'm not super concerned about connecting everything. When we get to the end and get everything traced, we'll go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the interpolate curves and keep working on this up here. Okay, there's the tire. Here's a place where I'm going to want a straight line. Change back over to curves. Again, I used OSnap so that I can pick right back up where I left off, which is fine. Again, more points I have, the sharper the curve can be. And go ahead and start going up the scoop here. You can see we have a fairly straight curve, so I can go further in between my clicks. Here it changes direction a bunch, so we'll add a few extras in there. And I'm back to where I started. Hit enter to end my line. And there we go. For this one, all we want is the outline. Okay, so I'm going to type background bitmap again. Get rid of that. Does that look like the car? It looks fairly close. Okay, close enough for me. Now I'm going to hit enter to get out of background bitmap. We can bring the picture up again if we want to. But I'm going to show you how to edit points. If we highlight everything and type, whoops, typo there, type points on and hit enter, it'll bring up every point that we made. So if there's somewhere, like we noticed before, right here we have a dip, we can click on that point and we can either drag the arrow for the Y and the X axis, the red or the green, or we can drag the point itself and we can manipulate it wherever we need to. If we don't like what we did, hit Control Z and it'll go back. So that was an area that I realized I had a little bit of a dip. I want to bring that up just a bit to smooth it out. I can do that. Right here, I don't like the way my curve ended up sticking out. I can drag that, or I can try deleting it. I don't like it much when I delete it, so I'm going to have to bring that back in. But you can see as you drag, it adjusts the whole curve. So it gives us a lot of flexibility there to change things where we might think we need to change them. Now on this bottom part here, what I'm going to do, since I have a gap between the edge there and the tires, is I'm just going to drag that over so that it crosses. And I'm going to do the same thing on the front here. What we notice is that it shows in that dotted line where our original line was, so we can keep it lined up. And we're just going to drag that so that those cross, so that we can trim that and make that all one. I'm going to do the same thing here. Drag it so that they cross. Okay. If I'm happy with how that looks, now I can go ahead and turn the points off. And you might decide to do that periodically in between anyways. I think it's easier to visualize with the points off, but that's up to you. Now we're going to highlight everything. We're going to trim. So I want to trim those off, trim those off, and trim those off so that I have just the profile. Hit enter. I'm going to type join, and I've just joined everything into one closed curve. So that is something that we could now take to the vinyl cutter and we could cut that out. At this point, we're not worried about adding any of the detail or the wheels. We're just looking for a silhouette. So we'll save that and move on to the next step.